and welcome to the 10x Go to Market podcast. I'm very excited to have Eran here today. I have known Eran now for 3 or 4 years, just always talking about the space of sales tech and AI more broadly. So I'm very confident that you all will enjoy this conversation a ton. A quick background for those of you who have not joined us before. This is your chance to learn and ask questions and hear from leading experts in the go-to-market space. And really, there's no other company I admire more than Gong, and Eran has been there for 9.5 years. So I'm personally and selfishly excited for this conversation. So, quick background on Eran until I let him share with you his full background. He's the executive VP of product strategy and ecosystem at Gong. He's been at Gong for almost 10 years, has taken both, it sounds like, customer roles, product roles, everything in between to go from startup to large company. So thank you so much for being here. I'm excited to dive in, but maybe before I start, I'd love to hear your story and your background.
Yeah, well, excited to be here, Alexa. And like we've been bouncing ideas for so long and collaborating, so it's really great to be here. Um, Originally my background was, I started as an engineer and leading engineering teams, and gradually over the years moved more and more to product and then go to market, and now back more into some sort of a combination of product and go to market, which is fun. So I think I've never done the same role for too many years, so I keep moving around between different roles and teams.
I don't know anyone that has successfully done the moves that you have between engineering and product and commercial and sales and partnerships. How how did that happen? Like, is it something that at Gong those roles opened up and they were like, Iran, you're the guy, go do it? Were you seeking these out? Just tell us a little bit more about that journey because honestly, I don't know if you know anyone with that similarity of a career because I do not.
Well, I definitely know of people who moved around, but I think first of all, I enjoy learning new things and applying things that I've learned in one discipline to another. Um, but I can't say that there was a plan behind it, unfortunately. I think as I transitioned more into product role, um, I really enjoyed working with customers. And, at the end of the day, you're trying to build a product to make customers successful. So if you're not spending a lot of time with them, how do you know if you're doing a good job or not? And then over time, I got more and more involved, not just in hearing their feedback or their needs, but actually helping them become successful. So that's how I kind of transitioned gradually more into the go-to-market kind of discipline, and especially on in Gong, like for many years led the post-sales motion. And in many ways, to me, it's the same. We're all trying to do the same thing. Like we're trying to get our customers to be successful, to get value out of the product, and obviously to renew and expand. So it was just like a different vantage point to go after the same goal. Um, so anyway, to me at least, it felt like an organic kind of transition. But I know that sometimes it feels daunting. And I can tell you that if you had asked me 10, 15 years ago, I would have thought like I would never be on the go-to-market side. I didn't feel comfortable with it, so I never really imagined that happening. But you know, uh, it happened, and it was amazing and still is. So I'm glad that I had the opportunity to do that.
You know, you're not the first person who said to me that CS and product, I actually heard from Kip, the CMO of HubSpot. He said he's thought about moving product under CS or moving CS under product. And when you think about that, that makes a ton of sense. It's how do we get the customer to value and how do we make them come back to the product and how do we make sure that they're, getting what we sold them on out of the product. So when you simplify it to those words, it makes sense how your career has gone through. I'd be curious, for you, do you spike in kind of go to market versus EPD or engineering product work, or do you kind of see yourself as a jack of all trades?
Um, I think at my core, I'm a product person. Um, but I think at least for the duration that I did it at Gone, I think it was a really good fit for me. I'm pretty good, like operationally and building systems and processes that obviously you need to do on the go-to-market side. And I really enjoy working with customers, and actually enjoyed the financial and revenue area more than I thought. So it's more than just goal alignment. I think there has to be something for you personally that you drive energy from very, very different disciplines. I can see how some people who have done customer success would enjoy doing product, but some would not, and vice versa. A lot of product people enjoy working with customers, but they're totally fine staying in their realm and not really having to deal with like the daily challenge or the revenue or the renewal or the negotiation, etc. So it has to be a personal preference as well, not just a goal alignment.
All right, one more question, and then I'll move on to our planned topics because I know I didn't prep you for any of this. What would you say out of all those roles you've done is the hardest role?
Um, well, definitely for me, and one of the reasons that I kind of stepped off of the uh, chief customer officer role was that the scale and the complexity of the business was such that I felt like I couldn't learn fast enough to do the business the justice. So that was hard, right? It's always hard, I think, when not just you're stretched thin, but you feel like that you're not really catching up to where you need to be. That's personally not a great space to be in. So I'm happy that I had the opportunity to do something else. Um, learning is fun, but it's hard, right? If especially if you do it under a lot of pressure, and Gong has grown so quickly, it was always feeling you're a little bit over your skis 90% of the time, but that's part of the fun as well.
Yep. It's funny you say that. So, as a founder, I have to kind of stand up multiple functions, right? It goes marketing, then sales, and product, and engineering, and customer success, and eventually partnerships, and all these others. I found customer success the hardest to stand up, and that one took me the longest to stand up because I think if you also are someone who cares so deeply about customers and the outcome they get, you can get so like there's never ending work to be done. And then you have to divide your time accordingly. So I was actually wondering if you were gonna say that. I completely agree. All right, we can go back to the topics I prepared you for. So something that I admire of Gong that other companies have struggled with is you've created a category and then you evolved the category. So you started out in conversational intelligence and did an incredible job of the marketing behind that. And then you said, we're actually going beyond that. We are multi-product and we are evolving our category to be everything revenue AI. Tell us about that evolution.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's unusual for companies to create a category, and it's probably unusual for companies to create multiple categories. And we actually evolved from conversation intelligence to revenue intelligence, now to revenue AI and revenue orchestration. So uh, I think it comes with a lot of, if you want to create a category, it's really, really hard, but it also allows you to set the stage and set the narrative and define the space in a way that aligns with your vision. One thing that many people don't necessarily know about Gong is that our vision almost from day one was 95% what we're still doing. So those transitions did not necessarily reflect that we had changed where we wanted to go, but almost like reflect the steps to get there. Um, like when we started with conversation intelligence, now it seems like table stakes, but it was a very new concept. No one was really doing it. There was like a few other startups, smaller or as at our size, that were trying to do something. So there was a lot of market education. We couldn't really take where we are today and start there. I'm joking that for the first 7 or 8 years of our existence, we couldn't say the word AI. Like we've been doing AI since day one, but it was taboo because it felt like, you know, I don't know, just like a marketing acronym that doesn't mean anything. It felt like, but now with everyone talking about AI, and thank you, ChatGPT, for educating the market. So you have to build it in a step function to get to where you want to go. It's very hard to educate the market to something that is 3 steps ahead. Um, so the strategy behind it was there. The execution is really hard, and it's not just marketing. It's a holistic approach of like, what does your product vision look like? What do customers tell you that they need, especially the early adopters and those who think ahead? Um, so finding the right moment to change the category or recreate it was really um, really important. Um, you definitely see it from the outside as mostly a marketing initiative, and our marketing team has done and is doing an amazing job at it. But it's a company strategy decision and alignment that requires every single group inside of the company to know exactly what does it mean for them. We talk about CS. How do you talk to your customers? Like, how do you position the solution? How do you think about the value? All of that has to change when you shift the category definition.
You talked about how it wasn't seamless from conversation intelligence to revenue AI. Like there were some steps in between. And I'd imagine that you've tested different things and maybe there were some times where you were testing a category, but timing wasn't right because you were maybe 3 years too early before people were talking about AI, or maybe you did something that didn't land, so you needed to quickly shift gears. Um, or maybe something totally different that I didn't just mention. Like, what were those maybe like starts and stops through that evolution?
Um, I think first you look at the ecosystem around you, and sometimes you feel like for conversation intelligence, for example, after a few years, it felt like, okay, the term doesn't really reflect the value that we're providing. And there's maybe some newer players in the market, and the distinction of the value that we are providing and can provide and what they're doing is not clear enough. And you're also starting to hear from customers that they, especially again, the more strategic ones, those that think ahead of the curve, that they're seeing the value in a very different way. So we're like, okay, we educated the market that conversations are the core like data layer that you can really get insights out of. But now let's really switch that to talking about the value, and the value is revenue, right? And revenue, it's the intelligence about your revenue motion, not just the conversation. So if you think about it, it's a little bit like shifting from what does this product do from a feature function perspective to what does it impact?
Huh.
And it's hard to switch directly there. The usually you tell people in early stage companies like focus on the value that you provide, not what the product does. But when you're doing something that is completely new, at some level you also have to explain to the market what does the technology do? Like if that is like a core new piece of the you have to get people intuitively understand what you're doing, even if the value proposition is something that you have to lead them to.
Mm.
So as the market evolved a little bit and matured, we could have switched more to the outcomes and the value and the transformation versus like what is the core technology and what's new here.
Yeah. It's an interesting point of maybe you're arguing this, maybe you're not, but you almost need to start with the wedge and what the product does until you earn the right to be able to be more value first and saying, instead of just conversation intelligence, we impact all revenue because that is now just a feature of the broader platform.
I think if you're creating a category, if you're in a mature category, you have to talk about the value because no one really cares about the
Mm.
technology, etc. You're like people know what you're expected to do, so you should tell them exactly why you're doing it. You're adding more value than anyone else. When you're starting to do something that no one has really seen before, there's something intuitive about getting people excited about the potential of what you're doing, um, to earn the right to have the second conversation or have the deeper value and other things that you're doing.
And it's so interesting because you almost right now, people look back at Gong and say, such a good idea, so obvious, part of every single sales motion. But I'm sure 9.5 years ago, it was probably an uphill battle to get people to realize this concept and believe in this category. Is that fair?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, first convincing people that you can record those calls and the technology would work and transcription works and customers would accept it. All of those things were like real blockers at the time. Even from an investment perspective, it wasn't easy for Gong to raise initial rounds of funding. Like this was so new. A lot of investors were adamant that this would never work and customers will not adopt it, etc. Right. So, and again, it could have ended in a very different way.
That's incredible. So let's talk about instead of the category evolution, let's talk about the product evolution. So you went from single product to multi-product, and you have multiple different products now that are key parts of the sales teams, really day to day and how they operate. I'd be curious, how do you figure out what product to build next, and tell us about that evolution?
Um, Again, in retrospect, it seems like everything was easy, but at the time it was actually quite daunting and hard.
Well, makes sense. You just knew it all from day one.
Yes,
Just
everything
found
works.
so obvious.
Yeah. Um, well, first, again, going back to this, we tend to show it sometimes in company meetings. We have like a very ugly mock-up from like I think late 2016 or early 2017 with like almost everything we do today was already kind of mocked up there. Like so we knew that we want to do like pipeline management and forecasting and engagement and kind of the lay of the land was there.
Wow.
There's actually a lot of stuff there that we haven't done yet. Um, but I think there's a point where you feel, first of all, we added actually initially more and more functionality into the same product.
Mm,
That actually creates some friction sometimes with customers because um, like what is the use case that you're trying to impact? If you have too much in one product, it could be daunting and confusing.
right.
Sometimes customers get a lot of value, but they still feel like maybe they're not getting enough because there's an area in the product that they're not really using today. Um, but taking the step to actually create a new offering, different pricing, different packaging is actually quite hard. We spent a lot of time talking to companies in our space and other spaces that have made that transition and learn from them, um, like what worked, what didn't work. How do you think about the go to market in a different way? It's a very difficult transition. Um, the first product that we've launched in this package way was actually forecasting.
Yep.
Um, and the initial launch was hard. Like we learned over time to do it much better, but it was very hectic, very stressful.
What
Um,
made it so hard?
it's it's a huge transition, and I actually think it's especially hard when your existing product is doing very well because you have to get like your marketing team, your sales team, your customer success team to really lean in and learn a new domain, learn a new product, a new value proposition where your existing product is doing really well.
So how do you incentivize them to learn
How
that?
do you incentivize them? How do you give them enough confidence to talk about something completely new? Um, and also operationally as a sales team, right? There's a lot of things happening behind the scenes of like, how do you create the right incentives? How do you get pricing right? What type of KPIs are you measuring beyond just revenue? Because if you have a product that's doing really well, the new product is obviously going to be a very small sliver of your revenue the first couple of years. So how do you incentivize? It might be a lot easier to sell more licenses of the existing product than expand to other teams or other use cases that would create more friction, longer sales cycle. Um, so it took us a long time to understand how to create that incentive, what didn't work initially, get sort of a methodology going. I think we're getting better at it, but it's by no means an easy motion to get right.
Anything you learned from forecasts that made you change the approach for Gong Engage?
Um, I think our packaging was much cleaner. With forecasts, for example, initially a lot of the deal board functionality was in the main product.
Mm,
And so there was like a little bit of lack of clarity of like what am I getting with X and what am I getting with Y. The entire support structure internally, um, today, when we launch a new product, we create an expert group that can really support the team. So people who are really experts in that domain, in the value proposition, in the competition, in the metrics that companies are looking to accomplish, in the terminology that is common in the market. Like there's a lot of learning to be had, and it's hard to do that across hundreds of people. So we usually start with a smaller group. Everyone is selling. We don't have usually an overlay model, but we have a smaller group of experts that can lean in into deals and help people and, guide them through it and participate in the deal if necessary. So when you get the initial wins and the success stories, so it's easier to do it at a wider scale, but you have to have this like core group that is really leaning in
Is the core group coming from mostly product, or do you have experts on sales and CS that really deeply know this new product as well?
across all teams.
Huh,
Implementation might be implementing Engage is very different than implementing
right.
kind of the core of Gong, like um, product marketing, competitive intelligence. All of these functions need to adjust and have someone who's a domain expert there to support that overall motion. It really is a cross-functional motion. I don't think there's very little teams in the company that are not impacted by something like this.
Yeah. It's such a good point that I don't think a lot of people think about of the when your first product's so good, how do you then make it so people actually want to sell the next product? And it probably is very conflicting with how they are paid or the easy path. So you have to make the harder path look appealing to them. Um, really interesting. That just got my head spinning. So maybe last topic, which everyone is thinking about, the topic of AI. Um, I saw in a recent report that your AMA feature has increased 50% in the last 12 months. Um, I would love to hear your perspective on what AI adoption you think looks like more broadly in the go-to-market space, and then maybe how you think about it at Gong.
Yeah. Um, well, there's definitely a lot of hunger in the customer base to leverage AI more. Um, I would probably look at it as two separate tracks. I think there's the types of things that AI in the consumer world kind of educates everyone, and they expect to see that in B2B applications. So chat experiences, asking questions, getting answers, the ability to get like insights in a much easier way. I think people just got used to it. So I think Ask Me Anything is kind of like in the same vein. People, you almost like don't have to explain how, how to use it. It's just like very easy to do. I think adoption there is going to continue and increase. We're very happy that every consumer now knows how to use those type of things. So it's very intuitive. I think where I see maybe a slower adoption curve is like some of the workflow automation and agentic workflows and really and again, different companies are in different places, and we do see companies much more open today that AI we just do stuff
Mm,
and make decisions. Uh, but it's actually a pretty big decision to say I'm okay that this AI would stop sending emails to my customers,
huh.
right? Just a level of confidence, is that going to be, higher quality enough? Like you can't really afford any glitches there. And people are not used to it yet, right? You don't, in your normal day-to-day life, you don't see it as much. So there's a lot of curiosity. I think there's a lot of customers trying things out, and there's some really good success stories. But especially as you go up market to the enterprise, the stakes are really high. Customers want to have a level of control. So it's probably going to be faster than we've seen in other B2B kind of trends, but I think it's going to be much slower than the rep experience, where it's much more intuitive and easy to digest.
Yeah, I totally agree, and this might bite me later, but the only areas that I see AI sending emails on behalf of reps working is either really down market SMB or for really transactional sales motions, where it's basically a marketing automation campaign. Otherwise, it's way too risky to have that going automatically. I would be curious then and I agree with you, like, what is obvious around chat from ChatGPT now makes it really easy to use in Gong and other platforms with chat. Um, there's a big divide we see in our customer bases. There's extremes on both ends of people who want to go deep and only invest in one AI revenue platform and really just put everything there so that you're reading off of the same data. And then there's another extreme of we don't know who the winners are, so we want to bet across multiple point solutions and build internally, etc. Do you have kind of an opinion on? I mean, I know Gong is obviously trying to do the unified platform approach, but like when that perception in the market will shift and like how organizations are preferring either the put together point solutions versus the consolidated platform.
Well, I think there's a shift towards consolidation, even regardless of AI, and that's part of it is because of the latest downturn, where I think what customers realize is that having a lot of point solutions is actually detrimental to the business, not just because of the level of investment, but because adoption tends to be lower when people need to spend their time in 10 different tools. And because the data and insights and workflows are broken, then you're actually flying blind in some cases because it's very hard to stitch things together. So even regardless of AI, I think that's one of the reasons why we're seeing more consolidation and kind of the evolution of more centralized platforms where people spend most of their time, or even automation and workflows would happen. And it's not just in RevTech, you can see it in other domains as well. I think with AI, it's actually even stronger because AI is so reliant on the data that you have that if you have multiple systems and they have like data silos around them, it's becoming actually even harder to leverage AI. And that has been kind of our story from the get go. Let's get the most important data pieces in and build AI on top of it. Um, I do think that consolidation would continue, um, but I don't like the ecosystem. Ecosystems are very complex, so there's going to be, I think, more like bigger centers of gravity, but probably not one. Um, And I think in every domain, including in RevTech, one of those centers of gravity is going to be maybe, hopefully in RevTech, it's going to be Gong. You'll have like some sort of a system of record that is maybe your CRM, but you will also see the horizontal AI platform becoming hugely important in almost every domain of work. And those three kind of centers of gravity would need to work really well together to get customers to justify the investment. So for us, for example, like AI interoperability is hugely important. So we're working really hard and investing a lot to make sure that we work really closely with all of these platforms, and that even if you don't work inside of Gong, but we want you to be able to get our deep insights um, and data, so you can use it in other places as well, and vice versa. We would like to be able to ingest data from partners in the ecosystem where they have expertise. And I think that's one of the most important evolutions of where AI systems are going right now, the ability to interoperate.
That just opened a can of worms that I have about 20 more questions on, but we are at time. Iran, as always, it's so good catching up. I can't wait to go deeper on that in our next one-on-one Zoom. But we'll no everyone else will have to guess what we cover for the podcast. But thank you so much, Iran. This was so awesome to hear from you.
Thank you for having me. This was great fun.